Thanks to KTC for sponsoring a portion of this video. Apple has issued a bounty to bolster its Dolby Atmos music catalog. More Dolby Atmos music for everyone to enjoy sounds awesome, right? Maybe, or maybe it could cause a catastrophe. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Caleb Dennison, and as a music fan and a spatial audio fan, I want to be excited that Apple is incentivizing record labels and artists to get busy making Dolby Atmos music mixes, so that's an option for more songs and records, and not just on Apple Music, but anywhere you can get spatial audio. But y'all, I'm worried, and for good reason, as I'll soon explain. Now, it doesn't have to be a bad scene, so I'll talk about how things could go right, too, but based on what we know, this situation is primed to go sideways in a hurry. Hurry being the operative word. Before I explain, a quick word from today's sponsor. Ever since I started raving about OLED TVs, folks have been asking for OLED gaming monitors. Well, the good news is that OLED gaming monitors are finally here. The thing is, they tend to be pretty spendy. Totally worth it, but spendy. Obviously, if you can save some money on an OLED monitor, you should. And that's where KTC's G27P6 comes in. KTC has been manufacturing monitors for brands like Samsung and ViewSonic for years, but now it's arrived in the US with its own brand of monitors, and that means you can have all the quality and more features at a more affordable price. Unlike TVs, OLED monitors rely on your PC for picture processing, which means I 100% stand behind buying a product from the brand that makes OLED monitors for other brands, but without the price hikes that come with those brand names. That's KTC. This G27P6 has everything you want, plus some stuff the others don't have. That includes a crisp and lightning quick 240Hz OLED panel, FreeSync and G-Sync compatibility, all the cables you need right in the box, a fully adjustable stand, and built-in speakers, and it costs less than the competition. Oh, and for you purists out there, I measured this monitor from KTC, and using its built-in DCI P3 picture mode, it produced remarkably accurate colors and 1000 nits peak HDR brightness on a 3% window. So game away for sure. And this monitor is great for production work too. I mean, I'm sold. KTC is not getting this back from me. I highly recommend you get one too. Find a link to the G27P6 at its best price down below. Thanks again to KTC for sponsoring this portion of our video. Here's the deal. Dolby Atmos music done right is downright magical. But Dolby Atmos music done wrong? I mean, it sucks. I'm not gonna mince words. And what Apple just did could result in a flood of really crappy Dolby Atmos music tracks that could not just turn people off of Dolby Atmos, it could have them thinking Apple Music in general sucks, which, at least presently, it absolutely does not. Look, if your first experience with Dolby Atmos music is with like Billie Eilish's Happier Than Ever, you're gonna love it. I mean, listen to I Didn't Change My Number in Dolby Atmos and tell me you don't jump. INXS's Kick album sounds amazing in Atmos, and the Atmos version of Dark Side of the Moon, yo, let's just say that album was a trip before, but in Atmos, it will blow your mind. But if your first experience with Dolby Atmos is like Ariana Grande's Into You or Weezer's Buddy Holly or INXS's Mediate album, you're likely to think this Atmos music thing is lame, which at best means you figure out how to turn it off and just stick to stereo, or at worst, you just quit any platform that seems like it's trying to force it on you. Worse for Apple, it could make people think it's their AirPods that's causing the problem. And I mean, I haven't even gotten into how head tracking can make it even worse. So let's back up for a second. I know I still need to connect some dots for you. Why is it that I think Apple offering to pay more for Atmos music and leaning toward promoting Atmos music tracks over music that isn't in Atmos, plus whatever other ways they decide to incentivize, how does that translate into a possible flood of crappy Dolby Atmos music? Well, first, some disclosures and disclaimers. Bloomberg broke this news about Apple incentives, and my buddy Simon Cohen published a great piece about this already at digitaltrends.com. Links to both down below. Also, I happen to prefer Apple Music for like 87% of my music streaming, but this isn't really about Apple. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt here and assume that they have good intentions. And though you're gonna hear the words Dolby Atmos like 100 times in this video, Dolby itself has little to no responsibility in this situation. We'll actually get to Dolby in a bit. Right now, we need to talk about why there might be a bunch of crappy sounding music about to hit streaming services. The thesis here is pretty simple, right? Mixing Dolby Atmos music well, just so that it sounds good as a baseline, is really hard. Making it sound amazing takes a tremendous amount of highly skilled work. It takes a lot of time, even for folks who are well practiced at doing it. Hard work and long hours when there's a lot of money on the line? This is America, Jack. What do you think is gonna happen? We're gonna cut some corners, crank that stuff out, and rake in those Benjamins, baby. Hell, we might even just get AI to do it for us. Y'all, to me, this reads like the next Sleep Sounds on YouTube opportunity. Except, here, big record labels are involved. Record labels which have been losing money and shrinking, if not dying entirely, over the past decade. Desperate, money-hungry record labels. You think they aren't down to take some shortcuts for some quick cash? I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that they are. And I'm not the only one who's worried about this. I talked to somebody who knows exactly what's involved in mixing Dolby Atmos music because he studied it and does it as a profession. When I called him and said Dolby Atmos music, he basically said, dude, I already know what you're gonna say. He's co-creator of the Spatial Audio Calibration Toolkit, which is on sale for 15% off right now, link below, and host of the Techno Dad channel on YouTube, Channa de Silva. So Channa, tell me, when did you start getting involved in spatial audio?
First of all, thank you for having me on, Caleb, and hello to all of your viewers. I started my YouTube channel in 2016, and around 2016, 2017 is when I started actually covering Atmos. I started getting into Atmos. Now, Atmos for the home started around 2014, so it's still very, very new. About 3.5 years ago, I decided to go all in and put together an Atmos mixing studio in my home, and it was at a great expense, Caleb. This was not cheap. And I did it because I wanted to start mixing in Atmos, and I am a music producer. I started helping out my buddy, Mr. Joe Intel. He's the other guy that we got together and made this product. He was doing remote calibrations, and he said, "Hey, I need some files that we can't access using REW and this, that, and the other." So I made them for him, and he's like, "Hey, this made it easy for me. I saved hours doing my calibration with these files. Hey, let's put something together." And so in the creation of this product, we were able to figure out exactly how Atmos works on the production side and how it would relate to what the consumer, hears, the end user. And, we kind of discovered a whole lot of stuff that, they're not telling you any of the marketing materials. And it's been an amazing experience and a very eye-opening one at that.
Well, first of all, let me back up. How involved was the learning curve on this process?
It's very involved. Dolby gives you the tools, but they don't really tell you how to use it a whole lot, right? They'll tell you how to set it up, and then it's on you to kind of figure out, okay, well, where are these sounds going? And, if we're matching it up to film, does this sound have the proper reverb? Is it coming from the right speakers? Is it supposed to be higher than the listener or the viewer? There's all these things that we had to now take into account. And I'm used to mixing music on 2 speakers, and now we're mixing on 11 speakers. That's a lot. That's a huge jump.
You've got almost 20 years of experience in doing stereo music mixes. And as somebody who's already got 20 years of that experience in their back pocket, you come to mixing spatial audio, and it turns out with learning curve that it's taking about 90 hours just to get 1 3-minute song done. What's your first thought when you learned that Apple was going to be incentivizing record labels and artists to start providing spatial audio mixes of their music for playback on that platform? What was the first thing that came to your mind?
I was like, oh, cool. They're going to start incentivizing, more people to have Atmos mixes of their music. And then right after that, I was like, oh man, they're going to start incentivizing people to have more Atmos mixes, because it's a double-edged sword. Like I went to a Dolby Atmos mixing master class with Grammy nominated mixing engineer Nick Reeves. Amazing mixer. You know, he's done all the spatial mixes for Billie Eilish that if any of you have heard on Apple Music, Billie Eilish, Phineas. He was entrusted with the spatial mixes for the entire Bob Marley collection. And man, those are some of the best Atmos mixes around. This was a class size of about 12 people. They're there to learn, just like I was. And they've never really consumed Atmos. And I thought that was kind of strange, right? And I think that's one of the biggest things. Like, how are you going to now create something that you've never really experienced a whole lot of?
Are you worried that they're going to do a rush job or a poor job?
Right. You're just going to get a flood of them coming in, and yeah, there's going to be a quality issue. I mean, there already has been for movies for a long time. You get great Atmos mixes on movies, and then you got movies with Atmos, and it's just like all dialogue, and there's like nothing happening in the height channels. It's really sad.
Those are great examples of disappointment in Atmos mixes for movies at a very high, big budget level.
Yes.
Tell me what a disappointment in an Atmos music mix might sound like to you.
Okay, so as far as Atmos mixing is concerned, for music, especially being in that masterclass, that mixing masterclass, they are predominantly mixing for it to sound good on everything, and that's just not possible. And so, you know, with Apple Music, and you have the Apple headphones. I think I got a pair back there. The AirPods Pro, AirPods Max, you know, they have the head tracking, you know, and there's a different renderer. There's a Dolby renderer for that. There's also an Apple renderer. So when I export a project, depending on where it's going to go, if I submit it for Apple Music and I'm using the Dolby renderer, that's not a good thing, right? And there are all these different deliverables that need to be in a specific, you know, volume level for different renderers. It's very complicated, and you know, that's part of what we went in. Yeah, I don't know if anybody cares about that. You know, they're predominantly mixing for headphone use, and so all of my viewers that are home theater enthusiasts, they're totally disregarding that, I guess, demographic, because they want it to sound good on everything, and I just don't think that's not possible. And I don't like that, because you know, it's almost like they're just expanding or upmixing to channel, as opposed to really diving in and really giving the listener a new experience. And that's kind of what spatial audio and Atmos is about, giving somebody a new experience, being in the middle of everything, having everything surround you from not just front and back, but also, you know, top to bottom.
I mean, that's my concern. I'm just sharing personally. Like, my concern is that if you're just going for this sort of like generic sort of spacious sound, where you're not actually trying to provide a particular experience and localize instruments and have them work together in a certain way, you end up possibly doing damage to the music. In addition to your point, which is you're not really giving somebody anything new. You know what I mean? Let's dig into the Billie Eilish. Like, what did they get right with the Billie Eilish thing? Because as we know, they sat down and they were very deliberate about making a Dolby Atmos music experience from that music. It was extremely intentional. So with that intention, what did they get right?
They got everything right. He played us 2 songs from Billie Eilish, and he played one song from Phineas, her brother, that he did the spatial mixes on. And man, his approach is phenomenal. You know, not only, you know, we played in that session, we played the 2-channel, and then we played the Atmos mix, and it was like, you know, going from a 2 to a 10. It was very hard to describe, other than like, it was amazing. It was amazing. Like, hearing Atmos mixed at that level is something that I aspire to get to. And I think, you know, with all these newer mixers coming in, they need to start looking at these guys. Like, he's this Nick Reeves guy. He's been doing it since 2016 on big budget, you know, big big artists. So, being entrusted to do the Bob Marley entire collection, like you knew exactly what instruments are there. So having someone, revamp something as, iconic as Bob Marley's entire music collection, and doing it, he did it very well. He played us a couple of tracks from there and we were all blown away.
If Apple Music ends up having this big catalog of really unimpressive Atmos music, what do you think the downside to that is?
Rushing mixes and having just so much for the consumer to go through, they're probably just going to stop. They're going to stop searching. They're going to stop this is out in Atmos. Okay, well, I won't check it out unless somebody in a Facebook group or somebody on YouTube says, hey, this is actually good. You should definitely try this out. I really think, and this just means it's going to be more work for everybody involved, right? So when you're mixing 2-channel music, there is something that's always done, and that is checking the mix in mono. Maybe something doesn't line up properly. Maybe you have to go back in. So, I was thinking about this. I said this in a video. Maybe we need to print out a specific 5.1.2 mix, a specific 7.1.4 mix as far as speakers are concerned. That is like the basic or most often used home theater layout. And then we have another one for 9.1.6. And then we have a special one using the Apple renderer for headphones. We have a different one for the Dolby renderer for headphones as well. The way I would want it to be done is, have some sort of standardization. There's no standardization as far as what deliverables. They just deliver one, it's called a ADM BWF, or one ADM, and they just extrapolate everything off of that. If we were to actually mix specifically for each end user, and then the end user has a choice. Oh, okay, boom. I have a 5.1.4 Atmos system. I'm going to pick this one. That kind of thing. But that just means it's more work. It's more work for everybody involved. And I don't think the music studios, movie studios have that kind of, want to spend that kind of time and money for someone to do more work like that.
So yeah, doing Dolby Atmos music well is hard to begin with. And that's if you get the source tracks that you actually need. Now, I'm glad Apple has some standards in place, but if the only rule is you can't make Dolby Atmos music out of stereo tracks, then we have a problem. See, Dolby Atmos music often will be created from stem files, and how good a Dolby Atmos music mix can be will come down to how many stem files you get and how much they've already been messed with. For example, if you get one stem file with all the drums already mixed together, then you can't decide to put the hi-hat in one channel, the kick drum in another, and cymbals in yet another. The drums are already mixed together, so your creative license with object placement, in this case the objects are music instruments, it's very limited. And what if the vocal track you get already has reverb baked in? Removing that reverb is going to be difficult, if not impossible. That means you'd have limited control over how the reverb sounds and where it comes from. If the folks who own all of this music don't themselves take the time to send well-separated stem tracks, the resulting spatial audio mixes are not likely to sound very good. So what needs to happen for this to go well? First off, folks have to decide to care. I suspect most of the folks involved in making these Dolby Atmos music mixes do care. You don't just fall into the music mixing profession. The recording engineers, mixers, and masters that I know take their craft very seriously. On the other hand, everybody needs to make a paycheck, so hopefully these creatives don't decide to become part of a music mill that churns out Atmos music tracks as quickly as possible. And AI needs to stay way out of this. Look, I'm not anti-AI by any means, but we have already seen that AI sucks at music. Have you listened to any of the AI music that's been created? Here, enjoy this for a second.
We're all just destined to fall. I've lost it all.
I don't want the AI that made that mess touching something as involved and nuanced as mixing spatial audio music, or spatial audio movies for that matter. Next, record labels and music owners have to decide that they care. They can't just look at Dolby Atmos music as a fun little add-on or novelty. They need to recognize that the default settings in Apple Music will serve up Atmos versions of their music by default, when the support is there, and that not everybody is going to be savvy enough to turn it off if they don't like what they hear. They need to decide that Atmos music mixes need just as much care and attention as the stereo mixes got when they were created. And they need to fork over the assets so that creatives can do a good job, then allow them enough time for a good job to be done. Don't rush it just to start cashing in on Apple's little pay bump. Also, creators need to test their Atmos music mixes on multiple audio setups. That means Dolby Atmos soundbars, full-on multi-channel Dolby Atmos home theater systems, in vehicles that have Atmos music support, of which there's a growing list, and finally, headphones. More folks will be hearing Atmos music on headphones than any other type of audio system. So yeah, it has to sound good on headphones and all those other systems I just mentioned. Now that last bit, checking Atmos mixes on multiple systems, it's baked into Dolby's guidance on how to make killer Atmos tracks. So speaking of Dolby, what do they have to say about all this? Well, Dolby has no comment on Apple's decision, and it's easy to understand why. Dolby's there to work with Apple by providing its platform and helping make sure the platform works on Apple's devices and delivery systems. But as creators of the platform, I do think Dolby has some responsibility toward making sure folks know how to use it well. So I asked Dolby what it does to help educate folks on how to create for its platform and how to use the tools that are involved. And here's some of what Dolby said. Dolby says there are over 200 academic institutions, universities, and music conservatory programs, as well as third-party partner programs around the world that have integrated Dolby Atmos into their curriculum. Schools are teaching it. Berklee College of Music, Abbey Road Institute, Blackbird Academy, Derek Ali's Engineers program. And Dolby says it works closely with leading industry organizations to provide Dolby Atmos educational resources in their communities. That would include the Recording Academy, She Is the Music, and a whole bunch of others. Dolby also has a website and social media channels that offer this library of free training videos and webinars and creator spotlights that provide best practices, tips and tricks, and how-to guides on Dolby Atmos mixing. There's a host of videos and instructional papers for on-demand education, resources where creatives can get more help, and plenty of self-learning tools out there. So from where I sit, it sure looks like Dolby is doing its part. It's putting all the education and resources it can out there. Folks just have to pick it up and use it. Like Channa did when he took that class he mentioned. You heard him talk about how very experienced recording engineers were just bewildered when they walked in. They walked out with more knowledge, but then, like Channa, they had to go home to their studios and practice until they started seeing some proficiency. So maybe you think it's weird that I'm getting on a soapbox about something so specific. I get that. Look, I just think that Apple Music has a massive influence on the music industry as well as the audio industry. When Apple drops a pebble in a pond, it creates tidal waves of activity. And I think that's happening right now. I love music, I love making it, I love listening to it, and as easy as it would be for me to be a stodgy stereo diehard, I'm actually into what Dolby Atmos and spatial audio in general can do for the listening experience. That's why I want it to be good. The music industry is starving right now. Ask any artist who gets hundreds of thousands of listens on Spotify and only has a few bucks to show for it. It makes sense that artists and record labels would want to make more for the music they put out in the world. And I applaud Apple for providing a way to make a bit more, though I still think musicians are tragically underpaid by music streaming services. I just don't want a cash grab opportunity to ruin what I think is an awesome format. Ultimately, I think we're gonna need to demand better as users. I'm gonna do what I can to educate folks on how to turn off spatial audio on Apple Music if they just don't like it, just as I'll be there to show people how to enjoy it too, because there is good stuff out there. I just wanna make sure it's all good stuff. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Hey everyone, I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Will you let me know what you think of this topic and my take on it down in the comments? If you liked it, please slap it with a like. Subscribe if you'd like to see more awesome tech coverage. I'll see you on the next one, and until then, here's 2 other videos I think you might like. Well, I hope that shit made some sense.